Part 56. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 551. At this moment, Zhuge Qinghong and two male disciples were trapped on the spot. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong's eyes were filled with a look of complete disbelief. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong stared straight at everything in front of him, feeling quite unwilling to do so. At this time, they were walking towards the temple step by step, but a powerful aura in front of them directly knocked them all away. After going out, Zhuge Qinghong was knocked over for a long time. And then he managed to stabilize his figure. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong raised her head and looked forward. There was a look of complete unwillingness in the corners of her eyes and brows. She clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. There was a special stubbornness about this little girl, and even Lin Yu couldn't help but be moved by it after seeing it. Lin Yu just shook his head, and then sighed quietly, but he didn't say anything more, but slowly stood up and walked outside. But after Zhuge Qinghong was overthrown, she still had no intention of giving up. Even the two men behind Zhuge Qinghong seemed to have given up. Zhuge Qinghong was stubborn, so she got up little by little, and then walked slowly forward. The two male disciples came to Zhuge Qinghong's side, their eyes he stared straight at Zhuge Qinghong, and then said in a deep voice, "Qinghong, we can't continue to move forward. If we continue to move forward, I'm afraid." The two male disciples stopped talking suddenly, but the words that were not spoken next were naturally very clear. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong just turned his head and glanced coldly at the two of them, with a rather gloomy look in his eyes, and a teasing smile on his lips. "What? If you two want to leave, I won't stop you, but I can tell you that I will never leave." A hint of determination flashed in Zhuge Qinghong's eyes. At this time, after hearing what Zhuge Qinghong said, the two male disciples looked at each other, and then sighed faintly. "Oh, Qinghong, what are you doing again? Why bother? Why should you do this?" The two male disciples stared directly at Zhuge Qinghong. The corner of Zhuge Qinghong's mouth just evoked a wry smile. "I can't help it, this is my persistence. I don't care about your choice, but I have my persistence." At this time, the Eternal Thunder Dragon seemed to have seen this scene, so he whispered in Lin Yu's mind, "Interesting, this little girl is really interesting." Lin Yu just glanced coldly from a distance. Although he noticed something interesting after seeing this, he did not make any reaction. He just sneered, "That's just it, if you have enough strength, you dare to break into the temple of the goddess of nature. This is no longer fun, but stupid," Lin Yu said coldly. At this moment, after hearing Lin Yu say this, the Eternal Thunder Dragon just coughed lightly. "Ahem, this may be what you said, but in fact, this Xianai, it's not that easy to get married, so don't be so harsh on others." Lin Yu. At this time, Lin Yu slowly walked outside. At this time, under the desert, a blood-red python began to crawl toward these students crazily. The purpose of the red-trained giant python was clear. This time, it seemed that it would never give up until it swallowed these little guys into its mouth. At this time, those few people were still unmoved, but at this time Lin Yu had already discovered that this red-trained giant python. Lin Yu's expression condensed slightly, and a flash of light flashed in his eyes. A bit of a strange color. "Oops, there's a giant red python here, and these little guys might be in some danger." At this time, Lin Yu couldn't help but want to take action. After seeing this scene, the Eternal Thunder Dragon stared at Lin Yu with a smile on his face, and a somewhat playful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Well, let me tell you, you will definitely still be unable to bear it, but this red-trained python is nothing more than a piece of trash. It is nothing at all. If you leave it to me, it will be no different from radish noodles." At this time, Lin Yu heard the Eternal Thunder Dragon, and after saying this, he just shook his head. "Let's reserve our strength for the time being. Let the red refined giant python be left to the earth-splitting bear to deal with. After all, the earth-splitting bear may not have come out to fight for a long time, so at this time, Lin Yu also felt that he was somewhat indebted to the earth-splitting bear. At this time, after Lai Diction heard what Lin Yu said, he was naturally moved in his heart, and his eyes stared directly at Lin Yu. I knew the master would still miss me. At this time, everyone heard the earth-splitting bear. After saying this, they also had some expectations for Lin Yu. Lin Yu just coughed lightly, and then scratched his head and smiled. Oh, even if you don't see how enlightened your master is, he will naturally not treat you badly. Ha ha ha. Lin Yu smiled, with a somewhat complicated meaning flashing in his eyes. At this time, the red snake giant python suddenly jumped out from the ground, and then the disciples of the academy saw the towering red snake giant python, and their eyes were a little straight, and they were all full of fear. At this moment, they were trembling, and then they subconsciously stepped back a few steps. Is this the legendary red snake giant python? This red snake giant python is an epic beast. This epic beast is probably. All the people's hearts surged with a little fear at the same time, and at this time they stepped back several steps in succession. At this time, the red snake giant python also slowly twisted towards them little by little. The red snake giant python looked down at them with a look of contempt and disdain. At this time, Dugu Qinghong's eyes flashed with a bit of unwillingness. At this time, Dugu Qinghong gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, stared at the red snake giant python, and showed an unwillingness on his face. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Chang. Chapter 552. After hearing what Dugu Qinghong said, the giant red python had a mocking look in his eyes. He looked down at Dugu Qinghong like a king overlooking the universe, and he didn't take Dugu Qinghong seriously at all. Little girl, I don't want to say more about Peng's matter. Today I just want to tell you that you will definitely die today. At this time, Dugu Qinghong also smiled suddenly. He was nailed to the frost blue beast with a smile on his face. There was a mocking look in his eyes, and the murderous aura on his body began to gradually reveal itself. Really? Are you sure you can really kill me? Dugu Qinghong said almost word by word. At this moment, the red python, after hearing what Dugu Qinghong said, just raised a few sneers at the corner of his mouth. Why not? You little girl doesn't have 3 heads and 6 arms, and you are just a beast master at the level of the domain master. Why can't I kill you? The red python said in a cold voice, with a bit of contempt in his words, as if he didn't take Dugu Qinghong seriously at all. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong burst into laughter, and then the murderous aura on his body gradually began to spread, and then he said word by word, Frost blue beast, ice for thousands of miles. The blue beast suddenly bloomed with a light blue brilliance, and the light blue brilliance rushed straight into the sky, and then a blue light column rushed straight into the sky, straight up to the sky. Such a violent power of heaven and earth, made people's souls tremble slightly. Originally, Lin Yu still wanted to help, but when he felt the terrifying and terrible aura emanating from Dugu Qinghong, he instantly gave up the idea. Lin Yu just shook his head, and then looked at Dugu Qinghong, and the smile on his lips became more and more obvious. I didn't expect it. It really made me never expect that this little girl is really quite capable. In this case, it seems that I don't need to take action. After thinking about this, Lin Yu was happy and free, at least it could be regarded as a comfortable life. Lin Yu has been fighting on his own, but rarely watched others fight. Although his level is a bit low, he just treats it as fun. Exotic Beast, Frost Blue Beast Epic Level 6, Level 49. Qualification, Exotic, Intermediate. Life, 9999999999777. Speed, 9999999999777. Defense, 9999999999777. Attack, 99999999777. Skills, Ice 1000 Miles, Ice God Domain, Frost Blue Illusion, Killing Spirit Return. Ice 1000 Miles, Frost Blue Beast activates skills to instantly freeze the enemy. The duration of the imprisonment depends on the enemy's level. Ice God Domain, Frost Blue Beast activates skills to summon the Ice God Domain. In this domain, with its own power as a guide, it can completely destroy the enemy in this domain. Frost Blue Beast can be a 10,000 enemies. Frost Blue Illusion, the Frost Blue Beast activates a skill, using illusions to attack the enemy's soul, strangling the enemy's soul with the power of ice, and can make the enemy die without knowing it. Return of Killing Spirit, the Frost Blue Beast activates a skill, using the ice energy to contain the powerful will of the god of death, killing people invisibly, making the enemy terrified and unable to escape. At this time, after Lin Yu saw the Frost Blue Beast, he nodded slightly, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and then he touched his chin. Not bad, it's really good. This Frost Blue Beast seems to have some skills. At this time, Lin Yu took another look at the Scarlet Refining Python. At this time, after Lin Yu saw the Scarlet Refining Python, his face was slightly condensed, and a bit of solemnity flashed in his eyes. Exotic Beast, Epic Level 7 Scarlet Refining Python, Level 49. Qualification, Alien, Intermediate. Life, 9999999999777. Speed, 9999999999777. Defense, 9999999999777. Attack, 9999999999777. Skills, Scarlet Refining Tornado, Rage Slaps the Sky, Bloody Domain, Killing Gods Rise. Red Refining Tornado, the Scarlet Refining Python activates a skill, using its own powerful physique to directly crush the enemy, making the enemy feel suffocated and falling into madness. Rage Slaps the Sky, the Scarlet Refining Python activates a skill, using its own anger to transform into its own spiritual power, which can make its skills twice as powerful. Blood-Colored Domain, the Scarlet Python activates a skill, summoning a blood-colored domain with its own power. In this blood-colored domain, the Scarlet Python is the absolute master, controlling everything in the domain. All enemies are terrified when they hear of this skill. God of Death Phase 4, the Scarlet Python activates a skill, using its own soul as a guide to summon the once powerful God of Death's heroic spirit to help it fight. When Lin Yu saw the Scarlet Python and glanced at the Frost Blue Beast, his brows tightened slightly, and his face was quite solemn. Alas, the outcome of the Frost Blue Beast is still uncertain. This little girl is likely to be defeated by the Scarlet Python this time. It's really a headache. At this time, the voice of the Eternal Thunder Dragon suddenly appeared in Lin Yu's mind, and then the majestic and vast voice began to gradually reveal itself. Although I also think this little girl is a bit of a headache, I don't know why, I always feel that this little girl may be able to win. It's a very strange feeling, even I don't know why I have such a feeling. Lin Yu nodded gently, and he looked forward, and the smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious. Maybe it's true. Although this little girl looks a little weaker than them, she won't necessarily lose. At this time, the two male students had already escaped without a trace. Their voices were heard from afar. Schoolmate, you use your beast to hold on here first, we will go back to find reinforcements. Don't worry, once we find reinforcements, they will come to rescue you as soon as possible. After the two shameless villains finished speaking, they just flashed away without even a moment's hesitation. For some reason, Gu Qinghong suddenly felt a little sad in his heart. After seeing the scene from a distance, Lin Yu just shook his head and smiled. Although he couldn't stand such things, it was understandable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Sheng Chang. Chapter 553. After seeing Dugu Qinghong being abandoned, the red python looked up to the sky and laughed wildly like this. Ha ha ha, little guy, your companion just left you alone. You ran away. I don't think there is any need for a fight between the two of us. Obediently, let's just capture him. If you obediently surrender and capture him, I say maybe I can give you some happiness. When Dugu Qinghong heard the words of the red refined giant python, a bit of gloom flashed in his eyes, and the murderous intention in his body began to quietly emerge. Even the red refined giant python never expected that, a little girl who looked so ordinary could actually have such a strong murderous aura in her body. The red python suddenly took a step forward, and then the gloomy look on its body became more and more obvious. Woman, it seems that you don't believe in my strength. Since you want to seek death, then if I don't kill you, I'm afraid it will be unjustifiable. After the red python finished speaking, it let out a long roar, and then suddenly flicked its tail, and finally it went directly towards the frost blue beast. Red train tornado, violently beating the sky. If these two skills are used together, they will complement each other and be even more powerful. After seeing this scene, Dugu Qinghong's face couldn't help but twist slightly. She subconsciously took a few steps back and let out a sweet cry, frozen for thousands of miles. After waiting for this moment, almost everything around him was completely soaked in a frosty blue color. At this time, after seeing this scene, the red python's face suddenly turned ugly. He only felt a violent force rushing towards him. This red refined giant python was originally a fire-attributed beast, and this red refined giant python was naturally restrained by the frost blue beast. But at this time, although the red python was a little weak in strength, he was still entangled in it, and the blue hands and the mouth of the blue beast let out screams one after another. When Lin Yu saw this scene, he couldn't help but shook his head slightly. Although this frost blue beast has endless potential, this little girl's combat experience is really weak. If so, I'm afraid, there's some trouble. After Lin Yu thought of this, he was already ready to join the battle at any time. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong's face suddenly turned cold, and then the fierce murderous aura on his body began to gradually be released. In the ice god realm, frost blue is disillusioned. And at this moment, the surrounding world was completely filled with the color of frost. After the red python fell into the realm of Dugu Qinghong, his face instantly became ugly. He was like this, struggling back and forth desperately, the corners of his eyes and brows were filled with a sense of pain. Dugu Qinghong just stared at the red refined python with a smile on his face. The smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and there was a bit of mockery in his eyes. What? With this, are you still satisfied? After hearing what Dugu Qinghong said, the frost blue beast's eyes were fixed on Dugu Qinghong, and a gloomy and cold murderous aura gradually spread from his body. Xiaonazai, even I have to admit that your strength is indeed not weak, but you are so arrogant and wanton in front of me today, it's not your turn. After the red python finished speaking, it let out an angry roar. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong felt the overwhelming anger, and his face instantly began to look ugly. Dugu Qinghong subconsciously took a few steps back, and the red python let out an angry roar. In the bloody realm, murderous gods are everywhere. At this time, I saw a layer of blood-red light suddenly glowing on the body of the red python, and then that ray of light gradually began to slowly gather towards the sky. The blood-red light gave people a mysterious and strange feeling. It was so wonderful that it made people want to retreat subconsciously. After Lin Yu saw this scene, he turned his head towards the red python. After a cold glance, there was some interest in his eyes. After Eternal Thunder Dragon saw this scene, he just smiled like this. Although he is talented, I am afraid that he has gambled away those talents. In fact, from my point of view, if you want to conquer, it's very easy, but it doesn't work to conquer it. The red refined python spoke unhurriedly, and then turned his head and glanced towards Lin Yu. The smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious. At this time, Lin Yu couldn't help but nodded slightly after hearing what the red refined python said. What you said is true. It really has no effect. It's not interesting. Forget it, forget it. At this moment, after seeing this scene, the Frost Blue Beast actually felt a bit of fear in his heart. The Frost Blue Beast subconsciously took a few steps back, and his eyes were so fixed. He stared at the giant red python. At this time, the faint smile on the corner of the scarlet python's mouth became more and more obvious. You are not my opponent, just surrender obediently. If you surrender obediently, maybe I can consider sparing your life. Otherwise, I can only send you to death. The scarlet python spoke word by word. Although he spoke very slowly, the sense of oppression on his body was never weak. At this time, after seeing this scene, Gu Qinghong couldn't help but clench her fists until they made a creaking sound. She stared at the scarlet python and then gritted her teeth and said, "Are you dreaming?" When the scarlet python heard Gu Qinghong say this, the mockery in its eyes became more obvious, and then it shook its head slightly. Really? Maybe so, maybe not. The scarlet python also laughed loudly at that time, and then swung its tail and rushed towards the Frost Blue Beast again. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 554. The killing god behind the red giant python held a butcher knife in his hand. He raised his hands above his head and then prepared to chop at the Frost Blue Beast. The killing god's shadow was even more powerful under the blessing of the bloody field. At this time, the Frost Blue Beast was about to be chopped by the butcher knife in the hand of the killing god's shadow. At this time, it was seen that Gu Qinghong not only had no atmosphere, but also smiled. Gu Qinghong's smile was very strange. Even Lin Yu didn't know why after seeing this scene. Lin Yu half closed his eyes, and there was a little surprise in his eyes. Then he shook his head. Strange, it's really strange. Why is this little girl laughing? It's really confusing. Lin Yu said slowly, and his brows seemed to be twisted together. At this moment, Gu Qinghong's face suddenly turned cold, and then a gloomy murderous aura began to show up. The cold momentum was revealed, and a strong force emanated from Gu Qinghong's body. After Lin Yu felt Gu Qinghong's appearance, there was a little surprise between his eyebrows. He really couldn't understand what cards Gu Qinghong had, and he was so complacent. At this moment, he saw Gu Qinghong suddenly waved his hand, and then a strong force radiated from Gu Qinghong's sleeves, but that strong force was not directed at the red python. That powerful force directly enveloped the Frost Blue Beast, and then it was heard that the Frost Blue Beast let out a roar, and then the feathers of the Frost Blue Beast gradually floated into the air. In this icy and snowy area, the azure feathers filled the sky, giving people a psychedelic feeling. After seeing this scene, Lin Yu was quite surprised, and then he nodded slightly. Awesome, awesome, the power contained in these feathers is elusive. Lin Yu said softly, and the eternal thunder dragon beside him nodded his huge head after hearing what Lin Yu said. It's true, the power contained in this little girl is really strange. Where is it strange? Tell me. Lin Yu frowned slightly, and for some reason, he always felt that the eternal thunder dragon seemed to have something to say. After hearing what Lin Yu said, the eternal thunder dragon just coughed lightly, and then said softly, in fact, the strangest thing is that I feel a trace of the breath of an old friend from this Frost Blue Beast. Don't you think this is strange enough? The eternal thunder dragon stared at Lin Yu, and at this moment he was also smiling. Lin Yu touched his chin, pondered for a moment, and nodded slightly. If you can feel the breath of your old friend from this guy, it is really a strange thing. Do you have any speculation? The eternal thunder dragon just smiled slightly, and then said softly, I just have a general idea, but this idea is not mature enough, and I always feel that things don't seem to be what I think. Lin Yu turned his head and glanced at the Eternal Thunder Dragon. Oh, tell me about it. I always feel that after the war, my old friend should have died. If I guessed correctly, he should have entered the reincarnation to avoid the sleep after that, so the Frost Blue Beast now should be her, but her fate is completely different from before. The Eternal Thunder Dragon said slowly, and Lin Yu was also confused. After a moment, he just shook his head like this, but he didn't say much. The two of them stared at the scene, watching every move in the scene. After a moment, a strong breath rushed into the sky, and then the strong breath rushed straight into the sky, giving people a very strong and terrifying sense of oppression. A phantom of an ice crystal phoenix suddenly appeared in front of everyone in the sky. The pupils of the Eternal Thunder Dragon suddenly enlarged, and there was a kind of surprise between his eyebrows, and his eyes seemed to be twisted together. How is it possible? Why is it like this? After a moment, the violent and fierce power around it rushed towards the red python. At this time, Dugu Qinghong uttered a few words softly. The killing spirit is back. The shadow of the ice crystal phoenix in the void suddenly flapped its wings. Tens of thousands of feathers in the sky turned into sharp swords and stabbed the red python frantically. In just a moment, the defense that the red python was proud of collapsed in an instant, and then everything in front of the red python disappeared in an instant. Then there was a scream that resounded through the world, and then the red python was stabbed into a hedgehog. Lin Yu, who was in the distance, was slightly shocked after seeing this scene. He just shook his head. I didn't expect that this little girl's strength is really beyond my imagination. She's amazing. Eternal Thunder Dragon also nodded slightly. What you said is indeed true. The strength of this little girl is indeed beyond everyone's imagination. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong seemed to feel Lin Yu's presence. Dugu Qinghong suddenly dodged, and then the next second he was in front of Lin Yu. Dugu Qinghong's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, and his face suddenly darkened. Who are you? Why are you so sneaky and saying your name here? When Lin Yu heard what Dugu Qinghong said, he felt like crying for a while, but he didn't want to cause trouble, so he just pretended to be frightened. Just now I saw that the red python was really scary, so I hid in this distance. I didn't expect you to be so powerful, and you even killed such a powerful red python. Lin Yu really stretched Dugu Qinghong's realm too far, and this little girl couldn't see Lin Yu's cultivation at all. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 555. At this time, Dugu Qinghong just laughed when he heard Lin Yu say this, and then spoke softly. Actually, this time I am also betting all my life. I am also betting that this guy can't stop my murderous return. After all, I have already used my own trump card just now. If this guy is strong enough, he can stop me. If I make the last move, I'm afraid even I will die. Dugu Qinghong said softly. Lin Yu heard what Dugu Qinghong said and just smiled like this. Hey, it's the heroine, you are being modest. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong seemed to have remembered something. She glanced at Lin Yu. Looking at your age, you should be young. Are you traveling at such a young age? Where do you plan to go? At this moment, before Lin Yu could speak, Lin Yu heard an elegant female voice in his mind. Main mission, go to Combat Academy, reward points 10 million. Lin Yu never imagined that he could get a reward of 10 million points just by going to such a combat academy. So at this time, Lin Yu subconsciously blurted out, Battle Academy. Dugu Qinghong's face brightened, and then he glanced at Lin Yu. You are going to the Battle Academy, right? I happen to be a disciple of the Battle Academy, but I don't know which level of disciple you are. Lin Yu just smiled, and then said softly, I'm not a disciple of the Battle Academy yet, so I went to prepare to sign up. Like a close elder sister, Zhuge Qinghong patted Lin Yu's shoulder gently. Yes, if you are ambitious, the Battle Academy is one of the best in the battlefield of the gods. If you join the Battle Academy, you will definitely not regret it, but speaking of which, if you join the Battle Academy, I will be your senior sister by then. At this time, Lin Yu couldn't help but feel good about this beautiful but very warm woman. At this time, Lin Yu just nodded lightly, and then glanced at Zhuge Qinghong, and then said softly, in this case, after entering the Combat Academy, Senior Sister Ken, you must take good care of me. Zhuge Qinghong waved his hand, but he was not polite. Don't worry, as long as you pass the selection, your senior will take care of you. Senior is a beast master with epic strength. What Zhuge Qinghong said is indeed good. After all, the Frost Blue Beast can cross-level challenges. Although it is only the Domain Lord level, it just defeated the epic Red Refined Giant Python, so this is not true. Fake. At this moment, Lin Yu just nodded, and then smiled at Zhuge Qinghong. Well, from now on, I have to rely on Senior Sister to take care of me. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong also smiled like this. At this moment, Zhuge Qinghong glanced at Lin Yu with a bit of confusion in her eyes. So, what level of beast master are you now? What is your strange beast? After Lin Yu heard Zhuge Qinghong say this, he was slightly startled. At this time, he began to carefully calculate. The strange beasts he currently owns are basically in epic chaos level or god level. If a god level beast like mine were to be used, I'm afraid it would be stronger than the elders in their academy. Even an epic level beast would probably have crushed the vast majority of people, and that would be too much. Too eye-catching. Besides, Lin Yu only needs to arrive at the Combat Academy now, and there is no need to join at all. After thinking for a moment, in order to preserve his strength and keep a low profile, Lin Yu just smiled, and then scratched his head. I don't have any strange beasts yet. At this moment, when Zhuge Qinghong heard Lin Yu say this, his eyes were quite startled, but after a moment, he coughed lightly. Ahem, it doesn't matter if you don't have any strange beasts. When there are suitable strange beasts to tame, Senior Sister will help you tame them, but if you want to join the Battle Academy, you have to pass the assessment. Zhuge Qinghong's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, and a meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Lin Yu just coughed lightly and didn't say much. However, he did find the woman in front of him a bit interesting. As for what was interesting, he couldn't quite explain. The two of them continued walking forward like this. After the two of them walked forward for a while, Zhuge Qinghong seemed to have remembered something, and then shook his head slightly. No. You must go to the temple to see it. When Lin Yu heard Zhuge Qinghong's joking, 3 black lines appeared on his forehead, and he was speechless for a while. He just coughed lightly. Ahem, are you sure? Zhuge Qinghong glanced at Lin Yu. After the little girl pondered for a moment, she nodded solemnly. Yes, of course I am sure. I must go in and have a look. Otherwise, I am really unwilling to accept it. There was quite a bit of determination in Zhuge Qinghong's eyes. After Lin Yu saw this scene, he couldn't resist her, so he could only nodded slightly. Okay, but there is nothing in there, it's just some ruins. After Zhuge Qinghong heard what Lin Yu said, he turned his head and stared straight at Lin Yu. There seemed to be some confusion in his eyes. At this moment, Lin Yu also realized that he seemed to have said something wrong. He just coughed lightly. Ahem, I've never been there, but when I saw that thing, it was so dilapidated outside, I guess there may not be anything good inside. In my opinion, it's better not to go in, so as not to waste your efforts. Lin Yu spoke unhurriedly, staring at Zhuge Qinghong with a smile on his face. Zhuge Qinghong also shook his head. No, absolutely impossible. Do you know whose temple this temple belongs to? Zhuge Qinghong turned his head and glanced at Lin Yu, looking very proud of himself. Lin Yu shook his head. I don't know exactly whose temple this temple belongs to, how about you tell me about it? Lin Yu pretended to be very similar, and Dugu Qinghong started talking without any doubt. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 556. This is the temple of the goddess of nature. How could there be nothing in it? I believe that there is definitely a huge secret hidden in the temple of the goddess of nature, so I want to go in and take a look. After all, Dugu Qinghong was talking to himself, with a proud look on his face. After he finished speaking, he did not forget to look at Lin Yu with such a smile. Even Lin Yu had to admit that compared to most people, Dugu Qinghong was indeed a more powerful woman. At this moment, Lin Yu coughed lightly. Ahem, what you said is true, but... Just what? But aren't you afraid that there will be some powerful alien beasts guarding you in a place like this? If there is a very powerful alien beast guarding you, even if there are treasures here, it will inevitably be like trying to draw water from a bamboo basket. Lin Yu just said softly. Others didn't know what was in it, but Lin Yu knew very well what was in it. Who knew if that guy would suddenly attack him after he went in again? Lin Yu didn't want to be exposed so soon. After playing like this for a while, Lin Yu suddenly felt that it was actually very interesting to continue playing like this. So Lin Yu planned to continue playing like this and was not ready to expose himself for the time being. After Lin Yu thought of this, he also said in a deep voice, "What do you think?" At this time, Dugu Qinghong's eyes were staring straight at Lin Yu. Her eyes were scanning up and down Lin Yu's body, looking back and forth. At this moment, Lin Yu only felt a numbness in his scalp. He coughed lightly, and then scratched his head. What? Is there any problem? After a moment, Dugu Qinghong also smiled. I didn't expect that. Not only are you not strong, but you are also such a coward. How can you be so timid? Dugu Qinghong's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, with a somewhat complicated meaning in his eyes. Lin Yu coughed lightly. Ahem, this. Dugu Qinghong's eyes looked directly at Lin Yu. There seemed to be a sense of ridicule in his eyes, and then he smiled like this. Okay, I was just joking with you. No matter what you say, I will definitely go this time. Seriously. There was quite a bit of sincerity in Dugu Qinghong's eyes. Lin Yu thought for a moment, and then nodded. Okay, if the two of us go together, we may be able to take care of you, but you also know that I am not strong, and I may hold you back. Lin Yu scratched his head, with a bit of helplessness in his eyes. Dugu Qinghong waved his hand and said boldly, "Don't worry, no one can bully you as long as my sister is here." Dugu Qinghong stared at Lin Yu with a smile on his face, a bit of amusement in his eyes. Lin Yu and Dugu Qinghong walked forward like this. After a while, the powerful force spread again. At this moment, a voice came from it, and then it spread into Lin Yu's mind. "Little guy, why are you back again? This time you brought a female doll? What on earth is going on with you?" The voice whispered in Lin Yu's mind. Lin Yu also coughed lightly, and then replied in a low voice, "It's hard to explain, this little girl just wants to come in and see what's going on, but you don't need to regard her as an enemy. This little girl's my strength is limited, I'll just take a look for a while, don't take it to heart." Lin Yu's voice was a little deep. After hearing what Lin Yu said, the voice didn't say much. After just pondering for a moment, a powerful force suddenly formed a barrier during this period. At this moment, after Lin Yu saw this barrier, his face hardened, and the murderous aura on his body became even more awe-inspiring. The violent power began to spread quietly, giving people a very powerful sense of oppression. After waiting for a while, Lin Yu suddenly pulled away and retreated. He continued to move backwards and retreated for a long time. Only then did he manage to stabilize his body. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong was directly thrown away by that force. Lin Yu hurriedly ran to Dugu Qinghong's weak spot to pick her up, and then held Dugu Qinghong firmly in his arms. Here, there is quite a bit of doting in his eyes. Silly girl, I just told you that the situation here is extraordinary. If you come here rashly, I'm afraid you'll be in some trouble. Otherwise, you better listen to me and let the two of us go back for now, okay? Lin Yu's eyes were fixed on Dugu Qinghong, and there was quite a complicated meaning between his brows. After pondering for a moment, Dugu Qinghong slowly broke away from Lin Yu's arms, and then shook his head. No matter what, I must go and see what happens. Today I really can't believe it, I can't get through it. This Dugu Qinghong is also a stubborn person. After a while, the aura on her body was revealed without reservation, and then a faint sound of phoenix could be heard, and then a powerful force rose into the sky. After Dugu Qinghong felt this power, his face showed a look of joy. Yes, as long as there is this power, it must be possible to break through the invisible space barrier, absolutely. After Dugu Qinghong finished speaking, she rushed towards the previous place again. After a moment, she was directly blocked by that force. Then that force directly threw her out. Dugu Qinghong kept moving backwards. After retreating for a long time, she barely managed to stabilize her body. Dugu Qinghong showed a look of unwillingness. At this time, she could hardly believe that what she saw was actually real. At this time, it was obvious that the guy was also in a playful mood, as if he wanted to tease Dugu Qinghong, and did not let Dugu Qinghong go over at all. The force bounced Dugu Qinghong away little by little, and Dugu Qinghong kept moving backwards, just like that. Lin Yu couldn't stand it anymore, and heard him say in a cold voice, I said, have you had enough fun? This little girl just wants to go in and take a look. Don't take it too far. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 557. Obviously, that guy also found out. Lin Yu was already angry. After a moment of silence, he just said this softly. Okay, then I'll let her go. But the secrets here have already been discovered by you. Even if this little girl found out something, it's actually nothing. Lin Yu certainly understood that the guy was just having fun. There was no other explanation except this. So at this time, Lin Yu just said in a cold voice, you just teased the little girl like that. I know you have a lot of inventory over the years. At least take out one or two of them to make up for the little girl. Lin Yu said this softly, but there was a taste of not being able to refuse in his words. At this time, the guy seemed to understand Lin Yu's thoughts. I tell you, you are taking advantage of the fire. What? Do you have any objections? The guy also wanted to cry but had no tears, and felt like a scholar meeting a soldier, and he couldn't explain his reason. After all, none of the people on Lin Yu's body were easy to deal with. If they come to cause trouble for him, it would be a bit unnecessary. I still have an ice crystal phoenix bead here, which just happens to match the attributes of this little girl. I will give this ice crystal phoenix bead to this little girl. What do you think? The guy said slowly. Lin Yu nodded with satisfaction. Yes, you are sincere. If that's the case, that's fine. At this time, because Lin Yu was talking to that guy, he just stood there. Dugu Qinghong thought that Lin Yu was scared, so he patted Lin Yu's shoulder gently. If you are afraid, I can go in alone. After hearing Dugu Qinghong's voice, Lin Yu came back to his senses instantly. At this time, he shook his head. It doesn't matter, we can go in together, I'm not afraid. Lin Yu stared at Dugu Qinghong with a smile on his face, and there was a bit of sincerity in his eyes. Dugu Qinghong nodded slightly. It's good that you are not afraid. If you are afraid, you can actually wait for me outside. I feel that it is so difficult to go in. I am afraid that we will be in danger after going in. Lin Yu was also slightly stunned at this time. Zhuge Qinghong turned his head and looked at Lin Yu. What do you think? Do you think what I said is true? Or, maybe. But we haven't entered yet, maybe there is nothing in it as I said. Zhuge Qinghong shook his head, with a firm look in his eyes. No, there must be something in it. Zhuge Qinghong clenched his fists, and then rushed up and flew directly to the distance. Her speed was very fast. She arrived in front of the barrier in just one breath. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong didn't say anything, and rushed in all of a sudden. The frost blue beast behind him suddenly used the power of frost to form a shield in front of Zhuge Qinghong. This time was different from the previous time. Zhuge Qinghong actually broke through. In fact, after hearing what Lin Yu said, the guy just symbolically stopped Zhuge Qinghong, and then let her go. As for Lin Yu, it was very easy to get through. Lin Yu just took a few steps forward and went straight through. Zhuge Qinghong stared at Lin Yu with a bit of confusion in his eyes. How did you get here? Lin Yu scratched his head and then coughed softly. Ahem, it's very easy to get here. Don't forget that you just dispersed them. I rushed over when they regrouped, so it wasn't difficult. Lin Yu's explanation was reasonable, so Zhuge Qinghong nodded softly. So that's it, I thought. The two of them walked towards the steps of the temple so softly. For some reason, Lin Yu suddenly found this very interesting, and he was in a playful mood for a while. After the two walked forward for a while, they immediately walked into the temple, but the temple at this time was completely different from the previous one. This time, the temple was a complete temple. In the middle of the temple, a light blue bead suddenly appeared in front of the two. Lin Yu nodded with satisfaction, and the guy's heart was bleeding at this time, but this ice crystal yellow bead should also have a great effect on Zhuge Qinghong, and it can be regarded as a sword gift to a hero, so it is reasonable. After a while, a force began to spread quietly between them. Lin Yu seemed to feel this force, and there was a rare coldness on his face. What's going on? What's the matter with this power? Of course it's made more realistic, but don't worry, I won't hurt this little girl. Obviously Lin Yu didn't believe what the guy said, but at this point, Lin Yu didn't say anything more. When Zhuge Qinghong felt the powerful force, he summoned the frost blue beast without saying a word. After seeing the ice crystal phoenix pearl, the frost blue beast immediately fluttered its wings and pounced on the ice crystal phoenix pearl, just like a hungry wolf that had been hungry for more than 10 days and suddenly saw a fat sheep. After a while, the frost blue beast swallowed the ice crystal phoenix pearl completely. After swallowing the ice crystal phoenix pearl, the frost blue beast's aura soared rapidly, and then immediately stepped directly from the domain master level into the epic realm. Even Lin Yu couldn't help but feel that this was a bit wrong, and the aura of the frost blue beast was rising step by step. At the end, when it was about to be out of control, it barely stopped. After seeing this scene, Lin Yu was also shocked at the time, stunned, and his face was full of surprise. After waiting for a while, Zhuge Qinghong's face was full of joy. At this time, she rushed towards Lin Yu and hugged Lin Yu excitedly. The frost blue beast has finally broken through. I thought it was hopeless for the frost blue beast to break through in this lifetime. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chang. Chapter 558. At this time, Lin Yu just smiled, and then spoke in a leisurely manner. Actually, just make a breakthrough. Some powerful beasts with ancient bloodlines and rich heritage may not be able to show 1/10,000th of their strength when they were young. So at that time, there is no way to let the world see your true strength, and many people will ignore them, but fortunately you don't. When Zhuge Qinghong heard Lin Yu say this, her eyes were quite surprised. She never thought that Lin Yu could say such enigmatic words. But after a moment, Zhuge Qinghong also nodded slightly. Yes, it seems that the frost blue beasts should be those strange beasts with great potential for strength. It seems that they are worth cultivating in the future. Lin Yu just smiled. At this moment, he was thinking, this frost blue beast not only has huge potential, but his full power should even be described as terrifying. This guy is not that simple. The two people continued to search the temple for a while, but the guy had already completely transferred his treasure, so the two people naturally returned empty-handed. However, the fact that the frost blue beast broke through was indeed enough to make Zhuge Qinghong happy for a while. Zhuge Qinghong glanced at Lin Yu. This time you came in with me, but I didn't find anything useful to you. I saw that you might as well take this first. After Zhuge Qinghong finished speaking, he took out a foundation establishment pill. The grade of this foundation establishment pill was not high, but for ordinary people, especially people like Zhuge Qinghong, it was already true. Not easy. Lin Yu turned around and glanced at Zhuge Qinghong, with a somewhat complicated look in his eyes. What does this mean? Is this thing for me? Why does it look like a pill? This is what disease are you responsible for treating? After Zhuge Qinghong heard what Lin Yu said, he rolled his eyes. He rolled his eyes at Lin Yu angrily, and then spoke in a deep voice. Oh, I'm so stupid to call you. This is not a pill. This is a foundation building pill. It will be very helpful for you to conquer your first alien beast. In this vast desert, there are so many alien beasts. Beast, you definitely have a way to find a strange beast that suits you. As long as you find a strange beast that suits you, you can use it to conquer it when the time comes. At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Zhuge Qinghong said, he began to understand that this little girl was pure and kind-hearted. At this point, he just smiled and nodded, and did not refuse Zhuge Qinghong's kindness, although these things were harmful to him. It was useless, but he still put it away so carefully. In that case, I have to thank you, Senior. At this time, Wu Zhan and Li Yuanshan were pacing back and forth outside. Wu Zhan glanced at Li Yuanshan and his expression tightened slightly. Senior brother, do you think we shouldn't have run back by ourselves just now? You know, that little girl is said to be closely related to the seventh elder. If the seventh elder knows that we are doing this, then I'm afraid I can only walk away without eating anything. Li Yuanshan glared at Wu Zhan angrily, and then said coldly. You still have the nerve to say it? What happened in the first place? Have you forgotten? You didn't run away first. It was after you ran away that I followed you. When the time comes, if he pursues the case, I don't need to say who has the greater responsibility between the two of us. Li Yuanshan stared straight at Wu Zhan with a somewhat gloomy look. At this time, Wu Zhan opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but when the words reached his lips, he swallowed them back abruptly, and then he sighed quietly. Well, what do you think we should do now? It would be okay if this little girl is really dead, but if she doesn't die, then I'm afraid. At this time, Wu Zhan's face was full of worry, and a look of helplessness was quietly soaked between his eyebrows. After Li Yuanshan heard what Wu Zhan said, he just pondered for a moment, and then he groped his chin. After a while, he also shook his head. Although I don't know whether this little girl is alive or dead, don't forget that even if that little girl is not dead, the two of us can turn her into a dead person. There was a bit of gloominess in Wu Zhan's eyes, the smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and there was a bit of mockery in his eyes. At this time, after Li Yuanshan heard what Wu Zhan said, he just pondered for a moment, and then a bit of excitement flashed across his face. I understand, but if we do this and are discovered by the seventh elder, I am afraid that the two of us will not be able to survive in the future. At this time, Li Yuanshan just rolled his eyes at Wu Zhan angrily, and then said in a cold voice, then let me ask you, do you think the two of us left him alone and ran away alone? If this thing is revealed, Can the two of us survive? Li Yuanshan's voice was somewhat gloomy. He turned his head and stared directly at Wu Zhan, his expression even colder. After waiting for a while, Wu Zhan sighed and nodded, "What you said is true. Anyway, we are going to die. We might as well fight now. Fortune and honor are sought in danger." After Wu Zhan finished speaking, he took a step forward suddenly, and then the two of them stayed here. They wanted to stay for a while. If Dugu Qinghong was alive, he should be able to come out after swimming for more than 10 days. If Dugu Qinghong was dead, it would be even easier for them to just go back. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong and Lin Yu walked slowly forward. At this time, Dugu Qinghong felt a familiar breath in front of him, and then Dugu Qinghong's face suddenly became ugly. Her face suddenly turned cold, and she was even more gloomy. At this time, after Lin Yu saw Dugu Qinghong's appearance, a little curiosity flashed in his eyes, and he asked in a low voice. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 559. At this time, Wu Zhan and Li Yuanshan saw two figures from a distance. After seeing these two figures, Wu Zhan and Li Yuanshan's brows seemed to be squeezed into the character Sichuan. "I remember, didn't this little girl stay there alone before? Our junior brother should also be dead. Why is she two people now? Who cares about her? Don't forget, the strange beasts on both of us are in the epic realm, and the strange beast on that little girl is only at the realm lord level. The two of us are in the epic realm. I really don't believe that she can't defeat a beast at the level of a domain lord." The smile at the corner of Li Yuanshan's mouth began to become more and more obvious. After Wu Zhan heard what Li Yuanshan said, he nodded slightly. "Yes, it's true. We have two domain master level alien beasts. We want to deal with him, an epic level alien beast, that's not enough." The two people just looked at each other and smiled, and then slowly walked towards Dugu Qinghong and Lin Yu. At this time, Dugu Qinghong and Lin Yu came in front of them. Wu Zhan was about to take action, but was stopped by Li Yuanshan, who whispered to Wu Zhan. "We are just meeting this guy for the first time. We don't know the details of this guy yet. Let's test this guy's details first to see what his strength is, and then we can make plans." After Wu Zhan heard what Li Yuanshan said, he nodded lightly, and then they both glanced at Lin Yu at the same time, with a few meaningful smiles flashing in their eyes. "Senior sister, who is this?" Li Yuanshan and Wu Zhan stared directly at Lin Yu, with a bit of confusion in the corners of their eyes and brows. At this time, Dugu Qinghong just glanced at the two of them coldly, and then spread his hands casually, with a sneer on his lips. "Who is he, and what does it have to do with you? Get out of here, a good dog doesn't block the road. Don't you know this?" Dugu Qinghong said in a cold voice. The sneer at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and there was a bit of mockery in his eyes. At this moment, Li Yuanshan and Wu Zhan couldn't help but feel angry after hearing what Dugu Qinghong said. At this time, Dugu Qinghong ignored these two people at all, and walked away with Lin Yu. After Lin Yu saw this scene, he looked a little confused. Of course he knew that this little girl probably knew these two people, but he didn't know why this little girl seemed to be with these two guys. Such a look of bitterness and hatred. Lin Yu glanced at Dugu Qinghong, and then smiled like this. "What's going on with you? Why do you seem to have a grudge?" At this time, Dugu Qinghong told Lin Yu everything that the two of them had done before, and then she continued speaking in a deep voice. "Do you think I have the best attitude towards them by ignoring them now? What those two bastards just did, do you think a person can do such a thing?" Dugu Qinghong said coldly, and then turned his head, staring directly at Lin Yu, and frowned slightly. At this time, Lin Yu heard what Tugu Qinghong said. After he said this, he nodded and smiled. What you said is indeed true. Your attitude is indeed very good to them. It is true good. Tugu Qinghong spread his hands, a gloomy look flashed in his eyes. Who says it's not the case? Even if these bastards die 10,000 times, it will definitely not be an exaggeration. They are simply too abominable. Tugu Qinghong said this almost through gritted teeth. Lin Yu on the side just spread his hands gently and smiled. He didn't say anything more, but he just thought this little girl was a bit interesting. Lin Yu and Tugu Qinghong walked forward like this. Behind the two of them, Li Yuanshan and Li Yuanshan's heart seemed to have hit rock bottom. Wu Zhan glanced at Li Yuanshan, and then he clenched his fists in the same way. He almost said through gritted teeth, "No, we absolutely cannot let them get out alive. If we let them get out alive, I'm afraid we will all die by then." Wu Zhan's voice was almost hysterical. At this time, Wu Zhan just stepped forward, and his indomitable look was quite a bit imposing. At this time, Li Yuanshan roared when he saw Wu Zhan being so impulsive. "Asshole, are you looking for death? Don't forget, that is the temple of the goddess of nature. How can a woman be protected by a beast at the level of a domain lord? How can she be safe and sound? Come out." Li Yuanshan's words can be regarded as waking up the dreamer. At this time, Wu Zhan slowly retreated, but his eyes were still filled with a sense of unwillingness. "Then what do you think we should do now? Anyway, if this continues, I won't be willing to do it," Wu Zhan said in a cold voice. Li Yuanshan's eyes narrowed to a slit, and he stared at Lin Yu's back. He just pondered for a moment and sighed quietly. "Oh, there is no other way. Now we can only treat a dead horse as a living horse, doctor. Now I am afraid we can only place our hope that that boy is not strong." At this time, Wu Zhan suddenly smiled and waved his hand casually. "I don't believe that boy is definitely strong enough, and looking at his steady pace, I'm afraid if we want to deal with him, it's not that simple." When Wu Zhan said this, Li Yuanshan was also speechless for a while. "I asked you, can you please stop making trouble everywhere? There is no other way now. Just walk with them slowly for a while. If they really encounter those extremely powerful alien beasts, I'm afraid they will use if we don't take action, they will die naturally." After hearing what Li Yuanshan said, Wu Zhan was also so happy, and then nodded heavily. "Yes, what you said is true. If these guys encounter those powerful beasts, I really don't believe they can escape unharmed." Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 560. Wu Zhan and Li Yuanshan were following behind them, but Wu Zhan and Li Yuanshan had the good sense to stay far away from them. At this time, Tugu Qinghong could certainly feel the presence of the two of them. Tugu Qinghong just snorted coldly, and then said in a deep voice, "These two bastards have been following the two of us now. What are you doing behind your back? Damn it, even if you die 10,000 times, you will still deserve it." After Tugu Qinghong finished speaking, he waved his little fist, which looked quite cute. Lin Yu on the side just smiled. "Didn't you just say that? They are going with you, so it is normal for them to follow you." After Tugu Qinghong heard what Lin Yu said, he nodded slightly. When the few of them walked forward for nearly 2 days and 2 nights, Wu Zhan finally couldn't help it anymore, because they were about to walk out of the desert. If it was after dawn, they would be able to get there in less than half a day. Get out of this damn desert. Once out of this desert, it would be extremely difficult to kill the two of them. So Wu Zhan stood up directly at this time, turned his head and glanced at Li Yuanshan, and then clenched his fists, and he almost said this through gritted teeth. "No, I can't help it anymore. I have to take action and kill them both. If I don't take action, I'm afraid we won't have a chance to take action now." At this time, Li Yuanshan, who was on the side, heard Wu Zhan. After saying this, he turned his head and glanced at Wu Zhan. Are you sure? Li Yuanshan's eyes were burning, and his eyes were like torches. Under Li Yuanshan's gaze, Wu Zhan was really shaken at this time. At this time, Wu Zhan glanced at Li Yuanshan, and then whispered like this. Then what do you think we should do? Now these two guys, I don't know why, we have obviously felt a lot of powerful auras from the strange beasts in the desert, but these two guys are also very lucky. That's right, why are those strange beasts avoiding them? Wu Zhan's eyes were fixed on Li Yuanshan, and his expression tightened slightly. At this time, Li Yuanshan pondered for a moment, and then he groped his chin. He looked at the bright moon hanging high in the desert, and then through the faint firelight, he saw Wu Zhan's an urgent face. At this time, Li Yuanshan couldn't sit still. The tall buildings vaguely visible in the distance seemed to indicate that if they didn't take action, they would definitely not be able to survive in the academy. This was not what Li Yuanshan wanted at all. Li Yuanshan seemed to recall the scene when those guys ganged up to bully him when he was young. At this time, Li Yuanshan couldn't help but clenched his fists and said through gritted teeth, "No, it absolutely cannot be like this." Li Yuanshan said this almost through gritted teeth. At this time, Wu Zhan didn't know why after seeing Li Yuanshan like this. He just felt like an awakened wolf in front of him. He just felt a kind of fear coming from his heart. At this time, Wu Zhan only felt a chill running down his spine, and even his tone of voice was trembling slightly at this time. What are your plans? Li Yuanshan stood up directly like this, wealth is in danger. In my opinion, it's better to kill them. We can't keep them for too long. Let's do it tonight. It happens to be a good weather, suitable for killing. After Wu Zhan heard what Li Yuanshan said, there was a bit of excitement in his eyes, and then he stood up directly. He glanced towards Li Yuanshan, and then followed suit. Laughing so loudly. Ha ha ha, yes, it should have been like this a long time ago, it should have been done a long time ago, but it is not too late to do it now, I will send them to see the King of Hell tonight. Wu Zhan's face showed a fierce light, and his body showed a bit of gloom. But you still have to be careful for a while. Before you determine the strength of that kid, it's best to try not to conflict with that kid. Make it clear that we are just to kill that little girl. Ordinary masters will not give it to themselves. Take the initiative to get into trouble. Wu Zhan nodded slightly, and he also admitted that Li Yuanshan was much better than him in all aspects. At this time, Lin Yu and Dugu Qinghong were just warming themselves up. Even Dugu Qinghong didn't know why. Lin Yu seemed to be good at everything except for strange beasts. For example, when catching sand rabbits in the desert, you can catch these little things with just some simple mechanisms. This skill is indeed very powerful. After Dugu Qinghong thought of this, his eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, and his eyes were full of curiosity. After Lin Yu saw Dugu Qinghong like this, he glanced at Dugu Qinghong, and then smiled like this, "Hey, what are you doing looking at me, little girl? Is it possible? Are there flowers on my face?" Dugu Qinghong's pretty face blushed slightly, and then he shook his head, "Are you so narcissistic? How do you know I'm looking at you? I'm obviously looking at the scenery." Lin Yu could understand Dugu Qinghong's stubbornness, so she just smiled and shook her head, but didn't say much. The night was as clear as water, and the breeze was blowing. When the breeze blew, Dugu Qinghong was wearing thin clothes, so she felt a little cold. At this moment, Dugu Qinghong couldn't help but shiver. After seeing this scene, Lin Yu took off her clothes and put them on Dugu Qinghong. Dugu Qinghong glanced at Lin Yu, but didn't refuse. "We are about to leave this desert. After leaving this desert, how far is it to your college?" Lin Yu asked in a low voice. Dugu Qinghong was slightly stunned after hearing what Lin Yu said, and then he said softly, "After leaving this desert, there is about half a day's journey, and then we can reach our college, but it seems that there is no plan to recruit students now.